look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Oh, yeah. I am the walrus. Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
I ate green berets for breakfast.
And right now, I'm very hungry.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Okay, listen, guys. I just recorded like 40 minutes of this show. I was trying to do this different format and trying to review films, but in a quicker way with some, trivia into it. And then wanted to hit on Kill Bill Volume 2, and The Getaway, which, of course, you've seen that's what we're going to talk about today. But I got bogged down for 30 minutes talking about some of these new releases. So I'm going to breeze through these new releases pretty quick just to let you know, should you see them or should you not? But first, what I want to get to is that, the format I'm still working on, trying to figure it out. It might be a review of some new movies, just kind of quick reviews. Then I'll do a movie that is connected, I'll do an already released movie and then a movie that's connected to that via actor, director, or theme or whatever. And then I'll do a deep dive into a classic old movie. And then some corrections from last episode is, first of all, the movie that I said I loved by Stanley Kubrick is The Killing, not The Killers. There was a movie called The Killer's Kiss by Stanley Kubrick that I've never seen, but that's the one that I thought that it was, that I was thinking. I was getting The Killers and Killing mixed up. So I knew it was The Killing, but in my head I was thinking Killer. Anyway, and the second thing to correct is the actress Catherine Keener that I talked about. I couldn't think of the movie that she was in, and it was the movie Get Out, where she plays the hypnotist. She was in that, and she was in Being John Malkovich. That's the first time I saw her, was in Being John Malkovich. And I was like, wow, I like this girl. And then I've seen her in other things. I saw her in an old Seinfeld and, all kinds of stuff, like I think I explained on the last show. And I think that's all. And if there's anything that I missed, just let me know. Or send me some recommendations of some movies you want me to talk about. You can also send questions or comments or all of the above to mycelluloidheart@gmail.com. So, some new movies that I saw in the past 2 weeks are the BlacKkKlansman, Mile 22, Megan 3D, and the Happytime Murders. Now, I'm going to make this quicker than I did a while ago, which is the BlacKkKlansman, I trip over my words, the BlacKkKlansman. The plot is Ron Stallworth, an African-American police officer from Colorado, successfully manages to infiltrate the local Ku Klux Klan with the help of a white surrogate who eventually becomes head of the local branch. And it stars John David Washington, which is Denzel's son, and it stars Adam Driver and Topher Grace and Michael Buscemi, which is Steve Buscemi's brother, who sounds just like him. And it's got small roles by Alec Baldwin and Harry Belafonte. And it's, of course, directed by Spike Lee. And it's written by Spike Lee, but also from the book of Ron Stallworth. So this movie, it had some really great scenes. This movie is very good. They pushed back the date, so it was took place in 79, but they pushed it back to 72. So you should still, but still, it's a great movie. My wife even mentioned today, she's like that. She was going through figuring out what movie we're going to see tomorrow, which we're going to go see Operation Finale about capturing Eichmann. And she was like, oh yeah, that was a real good one, the BlacKkKlansman. And I go, yeah, it was, because it was really powerful. At the end, they had news footage from Charlottesville, Virginia, that just showed all these racist people, and it was powerful in addition to what you just watched. And it's like, how does racism exist? It's just beyond stupid, but it does happen, sad but true. And then for these recommendations, should you see it? Yes, definitely. And then the next film that I saw that was connected to that was Birth of a Nation from 1915. It's not in theaters, but 1915 silent movie. And I had always wanted to see this movie forever. And I couldn't, I would start to watch it, and it was a little boring because I don't like the serious drama type silent movies. I'm more like comedies or more of a, I don't know, Sunshine is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a silent movie. Of course, The Great Dictator, Modern Times, The Gold Rush, all those great classics. The General, like with, Buster Keaton. Anyway, so I saw this movie. It's a 3-hour and 15-minute movie. I used to own it. I still own it. It's somewhere around here. The other day I'm looking for it. My wife's like, "You own that movie?" And I'm like, yeah, it's a masterpiece and whatever. I should own it because I love movies. And then after trying to watch this 3-hour and 15-minute movie, I found it on Amazon Prime. I fell asleep several times during it, and it was totally boring and racist. And so if you're curious, should you see this movie? No. Unless, like me, you're curious and you want to see film classics. Then it's got some interesting editing. It's got where instead of doing like two people talking and then a film card of what they said and two people talking, a film card, a title card, it's got like 3 or 4 minutes of them just talking or doing whatever. And then it'll show, it might not be that long, but then it'll show a card longer than it normally would. So that was different. But anyway, it's totally racist. They have the KKK, this guy at the end, the black people are taking over everything. So he goes and gets all the clans together, and they have these sweeping shots of these KKK guys riding on horses to come and save the day. And I was like, wait a minute, what? They're the heroes? Oh, my God. So, yeah, skip it unless, you're a movie fan, and maybe check it out. Then I saw Mile 22, which is, I guess, after the video game Overwatch, and it's an elite American intelligence officer aided by a top-secret tactical command unit tries to smuggle a mysterious police officer with sensitive information out of the country. It's directed by Peter Berg. And like I wrote here for my quick little review is, I guess this is a video game, but the movie is okay. Lots of action, but if you want a great Peter Berg movie, watch The Kingdom, Lone Survivor, or Patriots Day. And if you want a good comedy, then rent Very Bad Things. And you can see it there. Then I saw The Meg. This was all last week. Then I saw The Meg in 3D. And it's, of course, about the giant 70-foot shark. And after escaping an attack by what he claims was a 70-foot shark, Jonas Taylor must confront his fears to save those trapped in a sunken submersible. So it's directed by John Turteltaub. And like I said, this was in 3D. I've only seen, I guess, recently, the last 3D movie I saw was probably The Avengers in 3D or something. And it was up-converted, so only certain parts were in 3D, and the rest was normal. This was full 3D, like all throughout. And it was good and it was fun. But then again, we're members of that AMC Stubbs A-list thing for $20 a month. You see 3 movies a week. So would I pay $14 to go see this? No. Would I go to a matinee and see it for cheaper in 2D? Yes. Can you wait for Redbox? Yeah, sure. You sure can. So, but like I said, it was fun. I realized that my wife really hates the ocean. And she was just like, especially in 3D, she was like, oh, I didn't know this would all take place on the water. And I was like, well, yeah, it's a shark movie. What do you think? But anyway, then tonight we saw the Happytime Murders. And that, of course, is when the puppets of a 90s children's TV show begin to get murdered one by one. A disgraced LAPD detective turned private eye puppet takes on the case. And it's directed by Jim Henson's son, Brian Henson. And it was, I had my expectations high. then those Movie Guys podcasts said, keep your expectations low. So then I went in thinking, it's not going to be that good. And it was pretty good. It was a good little procedural, regular kind of cop story investigating a murder or murderers. And it was pretty cool. And then I was like, oh, okay. But all the funny stuff they showed in the trailer, most of it. So it was like, okay, that was fun. Will they do more of these? I don't think so. I don't think this is doing that well. But we will see. So to connect these movies to what I wanted, my original thought of this whole show was I would do movie news, I would do reviews, I would, and then I would do deep dives on films, and just to show my passion. And when I started to do this episode, I started to go too far down this rabbit hole of Birth of a Nation, and it became just this boring thing of where I had no passion for it. So then I thought, well, what does make me love films? And what makes me love films is when you see it on screen of somebody else loving cinema or the history of cinema or whatever, everything you've seen that is transformed onto the screen. And so I thought, I'm on Netflix figuring out what to review, what to talk about. Not really review, just do a walk down memory lane of what's great about these movies. And I found Kill Bill and Kill Bill Volume 2. I said, oh yeah, they're on my list, and I own them on Blu-ray. But I said, I'm going to watch these, and I'm going to talk about these. So I did. And then with that, I said, well, what else? What would go with those to watch? And I couldn't think of anything that would really go with it. I could have picked anything, a Hong Kong action movie, whatever. But I said, what's something else that I love? And another movie that I love is The Getaway from 1972. So I chose that one. Now, I'm going to walk you through Kill Bill. What I'm trying to do is get away from my notes because I like to go with my heart and my head and my soul of talking about these movies. So bear with me if you can. Kill Bill Volume 1. After waking from a 4-year coma, a former assassin wreaks vengeance on the team of assassins who betrayed her. And it's, of course, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, and it was from a story that him and Uma Thurman during Pulp Fiction had came up with these ideas of this woman, what about a bride who is dead, or who's laying on the ground and she's bloody and she's pregnant, and, these people have killed everybody in this wedding party, and she takes vengeance. And they were like, oh my God, that's great. And Quentin wrote it down, and then years later was like, hey, I wrote this 3-hour epic that is great. And I remember reading the original screenplay for this that he wrote, and it got released. Sometimes his scripts get released somehow, and I'm sure it's because people are like, here's a new Quentin Tarantino thing, and it gets... and it would piss me off if I'm him. I'd be like, motherfucker, because that happened with The Hateful Eight. I think I heard that escaped, so then he went and rewrote it a little bit. I think it happened with Inglourious Bastards, and I think I might have read that one, and I read this one, and it had a thing with Bonnie. Remember Bonnie from Pulp Fiction? She was the nurse who was married to the Quentin Tarantino character. When they took Marvin to clean the car out with Marvin's brains, and they showed a scene of what would happen if Bonnie walked in, and she's walking in and they're moving a body with no head, and she'd flip shit. Yeah, how about this much money for some new duvet covers or whatever? He's like, yeah, that would be nice. Oak. Yeah, oak's nice. She was in Kill Bill. There was a scene where the bride is injured, and she's in a tree house or something and calls her friend, and her friend is Bonnie, and Bonnie comes up there and helps her, and they have this conversation in the tree house. It was really pretty cool. But anyway, let's get into the movie. The opening shot is, her laying there. She's bloody. She's pregnant. She's in a wedding dress. You're like, what the hell is going on? And you hear David Carradine talking to her, and he's got a gun pointed at her. And she says, Bill, I think it's your bait. She goes, Bill, it's your bet. And then, boom, there's a gunshot. And then we go into this beautiful song of, My Baby Shot Me Down that I had never heard until then. Just like a lot of these Quentin Tarantino songs that I'll be like, oh my God, that's really good. And I'll buy the soundtrack and I love it. Happened with me with Pulp Fiction. Happened with Reservoir Dogs. I bought that Pulp Fiction soundtrack and listened to it till, pretty much broke or whatever. So then it goes to, she's in the hospital. Daryl Hannah shows up to try to poison her because they found out they didn't kill her at the wedding rehearsal. So they're going to go and Daryl Hannah, who plays Ellie Driver, is going to kill her with poison. And they do this cool split shot with like a Brian De Palma shot where it's like the screen is cut in two. So you see the bride just in her bed, in her coma. And on the other side of the screen, you see Ellie Driver coming in a white dress with an eye patch on. And she's coming to kill her, to give her poison. And she goes over there to do that. Bill calls her right at the last minute, tells her, don't do that. Just leave her alone. She's suffered enough. Leave her alone. So Ellie Driver gets pissed, and she leaves. And then we cut to Vernita Green at her house. And here I saw it a while ago, so I forget if Vernita Green happens first, where she pulls up there in her pussy wagon and fights her. I think it goes to that first. Then it goes to her coma. Her waking up from her coma and all that stuff. So, but the Vernita Green shows up at Vivica A. Fox's house, knocks on the door. Vivica A. Fox answers. She punches her. They start fighting right away. It's like this really cool fight in the house. I love that scene, that whole thing in the house. But I really love in the kitchen. So then they're fighting, and then the kid comes home. So then they have to stop fighting, put their knives away, and be like, "Hey, baby. Hey, sweetie. How you doing? This is an old friend of mine. Blah blah blah. This is." And then they blank out the name for the first time, and you're like, "What the hell just happened?" That happened to me. To go off on a side note about movies, because this was a point of my show when I came up with it, was to go on these tangents about movies. When I saw Cuffs, I don't know if anybody saw Cuffs in the theater or if anybody has ever seen Cuffs. It's a Christian Slater movie. Tony Goldwyn's in it. They're partners, and they're cops on like a private police force. And there was a scene in there where Tony Goldwyn gets so pissed, he's cussing at Christian Slater, and everything he's saying is bleeped out, and you're going, what the fuck? And it's a different bleep, and you're going, what the hell? And it just keeps going and keeps going, and then later, they cuss, and so it's like, it's funny, but it's just weird that they put that in. So this thing with the bride, you're like, they keep cutting out her name and not telling you what her name is. Then in the second one, then they tell you her name, and you're like, oh, sweet. But then she's like, look, I gotta get my kid some cereal. I'm gonna make her something to eat. So they go into the kitchen. Would you like some coffee? Sure. Gives her some coffee. She's getting the cereal down. She's reaching into the box to, unroll the paper like you do in a box of cereal. And all of a sudden, she's like, bitch, I should have been motherfucking Black Mamba. And she shoots out the bottom of the box. And the bride reacts and drops the coffee, kicks the coffee at her, dodges another bullet, throws a knife, sticks it in Vernita Green, and then, Vernita Green's dead. I know I might have spoiled something for those of you who haven't seen it, but that is one of my favorite scenes in that movie. Of course, I love when they're fighting in the House of Blue Leaves. Now I'm thinking that I messed up the name, but anyway. When they're fighting, all that whole fights with the swords. Yes, those were all good. But I really like that scene for some reason in the kitchen. I think it's close quarter stuff or whatever. And on the list of people to kill are O-Ren Ishii, Vernita Green, Bud, Ellie Driver, and Bill. When she gets in the car after killing Vernita Green, she sees... you see when she pulls out that paper, O-Ren Ishii has already been crossed off. Then she crosses out Vernita Green, And then you see Bud, Ellie Driver, and Bill written in big letters. And I think Ellie Driver was written a little bigger because I think she really hates Ellie Driver almost as much as Bill. Ellie Driver, of course, the Daryl Hannah character. Then it goes to her in her coma in the hospital, waking up from her coma. And these guys, this guy's selling her for money for strangers to have sex with her. She beats up those guys. Then she gets in her wheelchair, wheels herself to his car, which is a truck, which is the pussy wagon, and finds it and gets in there and then wills her toes out of atrophy. And while she's doing that, she's talking about Orenishi. And then it goes to, which has already been crossed out. Now it tells Orenishi's story. And it's this Japanimation explanation, and it's one of the best. Like, there was a Japanimation movie called Blood, The Last Vampire. And it was done, that animation was so good. I remember in there's a scene of a telephone ringing, and it's up close to the camera, and you're just like, oh my God, that looks real. Like, that's amazing, and it's just way cool. So it explains Oren's story, which is so good. This little girl and her dad is trying to fight off these guys. They end up killing the father. The one guy is either raping the mother and then kills her, and it's this whole thing. Not to give away too much, too late. And then the girl gets her vengeance on that guy that killed her father. And that tells the story of Orenishi. So she's half Japanese, half Chinese, and she's American. And it's one of the best. So in that scene, if I said that other scene was my favorite, that Japanimation stuff, it tells everything like right there. Almost as good as Up, the Disney movie Up. At the beginning, talks about he meets his girlfriend, that they have the exact same likes. They both want to go on adventures together. And then they end up being them going on adventure. They want to go on adventures. She gets pregnant. They lose the baby. And then she dies and he's alone. And that's all told within 3 to 5 minutes. Like, it's amazing. And that's how good this is. It explains a whole world of shit in that little bit of time. And then it cuts to the bride going to Japan now, and she's going to meet Sonny Chiba. Now, what's cool about Sonny Chiba, that I love seeing it in this movie, was Sonny Chiba was from a movie called The Street Fighter, Return of the Street Fighter, and Sister of the Street Fighter, or Sister Street Fighter. And it was in True Romance when I first heard of Sonny Chiba. When you're getting into this deep dive through Quentin Tarantino, if you're a movie lover like I am, you start going, what I like his movies, so what does he like? Because I'll probably like that as well. So that's where I find the movie Coffee, Foxy Brown, Switchblade Sisters, a movie called Rolling Thunder, which was the name of he had a video, he was releasing video DVDs. I think there were videos too back then, maybe just DVDs, but he was releasing like his things that he liked, and he would release them, and it was called Rolling Thunder's Pictures, is what his production company was, or that they were released through. And that's where I was like, what is this? And he explained, I called it this because there was a movie with Tommy Lee Jones and William Devane that had, there was a really good revenge picture. And I was like, holy shit. And I rented it, and it was really good. So all this stuff that you find out. So when I first saw, Pulp Fiction and From Dusk Till Dawn and True Romance, and when you're watching True Romance, for a movie lover, for a person like me and my cousin, you're just like, that movie speaks to me. Like, that is me. Like, I love movies. I'm socially awkward, maybe, all this stuff. So when you see True Romance, the first thing that Clarence Worley's going to see is he's going to go see Street Fighter, Return of the Street Fighter, Sister Street Fighter with Sonny Chiba. And he's talking about Sonny Chiba being badass and nobody wants to go see it with him. He goes to the theater, meets this hooker behind him. He doesn't know she's a hooker. He thinks she's just there to watch kung fu movies. She asks him to tell her all about him. He tells her how cool Sonny Chiba is, all this stuff. So now, when you see Sonny Chiba pop up in Kill Bill, you're like, I know that he loves Sonny Chiba, Quentin Tarantino. I know that that must have been awesome to be able to call or get somebody to call Sonny Chiba and be like, hey, do you want to be in my movie? And have him say yes when you grew up watching him in Street Fighter, Return of Street Fighter, Sister Street Fighter. And just like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, you know that he loves Grease, Welcome Back, Kotter, all that. And for him to call John Travolta and be like, be in my movie, like, awesome. Same thing with Robert Forster in Jackie Brown. Like, he's a big fan of his. He's a big fan of Pam Grier. He puts Pam Grier in Jackie Brown. Like, so awesome. So that's where... So she flies to Japan. She meets Sonny Chiba. She's acting like, it's kind of a cool scene because she's acting like an American who speaks a little bit of Japanese, doesn't know much, but she ends up actually knowing very good Japanese. And speaks very fluent in it. And she says, hey, by the way, I need a sword because I'm looking for a Hattori Hanzo sword. And he just kind of, what? Because he has not made swords for, I think he said 30 years. And all of a sudden he makes that. Or maybe he's made them for 30 years. But anyway, he stopped making them, but he makes her one because they have a common enemy, which is Bill. Then she leaves there and goes to the House of Blue Leaves. And it's this one long tracking shot setting up the geography of the building, which is so great when somebody does that. And again, Brian De Palma did this in Snake Eyes. In the beginning of Snake Eyes, he sets up that whole thing, like the whole boxing match goes through the whole thing. And it's like I think I counted it. These are things where I'm retarded when it comes to movies, where I'll tell my friend, a female friend of mine, I was like, hey, what's great about this shot? Like, I'm watching it or I'm showing it to her or something, or maybe she walked in. I don't know if I was living with her, whatever. I'm watching it. And I said, oh my God, this shot is like 13 and a half minutes long or something. And she's like, what? And I go, it's all one shot. Like, it's really cool. But if you don't look for that, you wouldn't even notice it. Same thing with that House of Blue Leaves. That shot is so kind of, you're like, oh, it's following her. And it goes uncut for a while. And I think that said that they did that a couple times and got it pretty quick. But it's amazing, that shot. But like I said, Brian De Palma did it there. He did it in, I think, Raising Cain. And there's one in Carlito's Way when they're playing pool. I believe it goes through the it's in the pool room right before those guys start attacking him and he's hiding in the bathroom, or it's towards the end when he's running to the subway train. But anyway, Brian De Palma is so great. And then there's one in Body Double where it's the that song, Relax, Don't Do It If You Want to Come. It's that scene where it's the guy in a porno, but you don't know what it is. You don't know that they're filming the porno. But here he comes walking down the stairs, and the music's playing, and all of a sudden, by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and all of a sudden the camera's coming down the stairs following him, and you see this guy singing to him, and you're like, what's going on? And then it pans over and goes to this room, and the guy opens the door, and there's Melanie Griffith. And then it cuts. Then they're supposed to have sex, and then she's like, wait a minute, and he just, he can't perform. But anyway, that shot was all one take. That's a great, like, one unedited, uncut shot. Like, I'm sure it takes a long time to do those, but it's very great. But anyway, and then, she meets the Crazy 88s, which are all dressed like Reservoir Dogs with masks on, like the Green Hornet, and they even play the Green Hornet music while they're fighting. There's a band there called the 5678's, which is a Japanese band, which was interesting because what happened was Quentin was in Japan and he's making a movie. He's making that movie, but he's in there scouting locations or doing whatever. And he goes into this record store and they're playing the 5678's. And he's like, oh, hey, what is this you're playing right now? And they're like, oh, it's the 5678's. And he's like, oh, and they were like, but we're all out or something. And he was like, well, they go, we can order it for you, or here's what it's called. And he goes, no. Give me the one that you're playing right now. I need that one. And they're like, but sir, it's not. He goes, give me that one because I know when I get home, I'm not going to remember it. I'm not going to look it up, but I want that music. So they were like, okay. So I gave him that music. And again, how cool is it for this little Japanese band, these girls, to get a call from Quentin or Quentin's people going, hey, do you want to be in a movie that we're filming there in Japan? Because Quentin really likes your music, and you'll perform it on the movie, and we'll put it on the soundtrack. Yes, please. Thank you. Cha-ching. So that was awesome. Then they do that whole sword fighting scene, which is just awesome. And the O-Ren and the bride fight, and they fight to a song called Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood by Santa Esmeralda. And what's interesting with this Quentin Tarantino stuff that my dad will clue in on. Quentin Tarantino is like older than me because he was born in maybe he's 10 years older than me or 9 years old or something, 62 or 64 or 5. I was born in 71. But he'll put stuff out there that my dad will know. So, like, my dad with the Santa Esmeralda was like, he heard that music I was playing because I bought the soundtrack, and he goes, oh, yeah, he said, I used to have that album. I said, what do you mean? He goes, Santa Esmeralda. I go, you know who they are? He said, yeah, I know who they are. I said, what the hell? And I'm showing him From Dusk Till Dawn one day, and he goes, oh, yeah, that's a guy from Then Came Bronson. He goes, that's Michael Parks. And I go, you know Michael Parks? And he's like, yeah. I go, the first time I saw Michael Parks was From Dusk Till Dawn. He's like, yeah, Michael Parks is awesome. I was like, wow, okay. And then this is one that I can't really hear when I watch the movie, but there's a bunch going on. I might have explained it already. If so, forgive me. Is in the Inglourious Bastards, there's the scene where they grab the German spy, but she's actually a double agent. But they grab her because they think maybe she told. And they have her in the veterinarian, in this vet place where all the dogs are and they're being worked on. And they have her on a stretcher on like a table, and they're going to take the bullet out, but they're kind of torturing her to find out if she really is on their side. And during that scene, my dad says he heard Dark of the Sun theme playing, and he knew that song because it was Dark of the Sun. And when he told me about that music, I said, oh my God. I said, yes, I know now, because I found a tape one time in my stuff before you had Netflix and you could watch whatever. My dad took the tape player, cassette player, and hit record and put it up to the TV so he could record just the music of Dark of the Sun with Rod, the guy from War of the Worlds. Not Rod Steiger, but the other one. And he was in Time Machine. And so he was like, he goes, oh yeah, I know this song. I said, Dad, I don't hear that song in what you're talking about. When I look up Inglourious Bastards, that song is on the soundtrack. And it's like, oh, okay, but I can barely even hear it. So that's stuff where my dad will clue in on stuff like that, or on the second Kill Bill, I tell you in a second. But so then after they fight, then she goes and meets Sophie Fatale. She gets her to pass on a message to Bill. And then Bill, at the end of the movie, Bill's talking to Bud, and Bud says that she deserves her revenge and we deserve to die. And then that's like the end of the movie. And then Kill Bill Volume 2 is very cool. It's the bride, here's what the synopsis is. The bride continues her quest for vengeance against her former boss and lover, Bill, and reclusive bouncer, Bud, and the treacherous one-eyed Ellie. And it's, of course, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino still. The movie opens with, so the bride is on her way to kill Bill. She's given this speech about, it's a roaring rampage of revenge. And the first chapter is a massacre at Two Pines, and it's their wedding rehearsal. And you're so scared for the bride because, so she's being a little different than you've seen her so far. And she's laughing with the guy she's going to marry. And she's being kind of weird with her friends. And you're just like, okay. You're like, this is kind of strange and different, but okay. These are kind of her people. They're her age. Okay. And then all of a sudden Bill shows up. She hears this flute playing. And she walks out there, and you were so scared that Bill's going to do something right then. Even though you know what's going to happen. This is what's great about movies. You know what's going to happen, but you're still like, please be nice. Just like she is. She's like, you're going to be nice? And he's like, yeah. And he promises her that it'll be nice. He's like, yeah, I'm upset. You left me with this guy. And this guy, what does he do? He runs a record store, and that's all you're going to do. And she's like, yeah, it sounds like a good life. And he's like, yeah, it actually does. They're talking. They go inside. She introduces him as her father. The husband, the soon-to-be husband, shakes his hand. Everything's good. She turns around to give Bill a kiss so she can go back up to do the rehearsal. And she gives him this one kiss. They talk a little bit. She gives him another kiss, which is like a sad kiss because it's a little longer and she's kind of knowing something bad might happen, but hoping for the best is what I got out of it. And it's really, if you watch that again, it's really pretty powerful. Then you pan outside. The camera goes out while he waits. He goes, go ahead, I'll wait here. She goes to walk up to the front. The camera pulls outside, and you see the Deadly Viper assassination squad waiting. The other four are waiting to go in and kill. And then as it pulls back, you can see Bill like back up a little way down the little walkway, and you can see all the people that are part of the wedding like move over to one side while two of the people get right by the windows and just start shooting and killing everybody. So it's pretty amazing. In the first one, you saw Michael Parks. He showed up. He played Earl McGraw again, which is what he played in From Dusk Till Dawn. He played that same sheriff. So it's pretty cool. And his son, his real life son, was there playing, playing his son of the character as well. Then we are introduced to Bud, and he is treated like shit, and he doesn't even care about his regular life. And what I wonder about all these people, because this is them now, after they've killed her, that it's like what is Bill doing, and what are all these assassins doing? Because now Bud is working like a regular job as a bouncer at a strip club, and like Ellie, I don't know what Ellie's doing, but Vernita Green was now a mom at home, like raising children. So it's like, is that their pretend life, that then they really, are assassins on the, making good money, but this is their jobs as like, kind of their alter egos? But I don't think so. I think everything's disbanded after the bride left. Like nobody had any work because, to me, and to what comes from the Paymay thing later, is I think that Uma Thurman, the bride, Beatrix Kiddo, that you find out in this volume 2, is the best assassin of them all, of anyone ever. And Paymay can see it. And that's why he shows her the 5-point palm technique, because he can see that she's so good. And everybody else who he's trained has not been good. And but I'll get to the Paymay thing in a minute. But first, Sid Haig is the bartender in a strip club. And again, just like the thing of Sonny Chiba in the first movie, this one, Sid Haig's a bartender. And he put Sid Haig and Jackie Brown playing a judge. And he puts him in this as a bartender. And you know that he's loved Sid Haig from movies like Foxy Brown and Coffee that he grew up with. And Sid Haig was, if those of you who don't know, he's from, what you more may know him from is The Devil's Rejects. And that's just cool little things like that he puts these actors that maybe you haven't seen for a while, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, he's using that guy. So that was cool. And then Bud goes home, and the bride tries to sneak up on him, but he turns the tables on her, and he buries her alive. And then it goes to this Pai Mei scene. And that Pai Mei scene, when I first saw it years ago, when I first saw the movie in general, I was like, come on, get to the, I don't want this stuff. Like, But the more you watch it, it is really good. It is, with her, like, learning that, and with Pai Mei does his, you see him do his beard. And I think he only does that when he's pleased with her. And he does that a lot when he's pleased with somebody. And he does it a lot with her. This is what I got out of his character, out of his reactions, out of whatever. And the same thing when she's sitting there and she's busted her hand up so much that she can barely hold the chopsticks. I was reading online, somebody said, oh, and then he teaches her to eat with chopsticks. It's like, no, he didn't teach her to eat with chopsticks. Her hand is so sore and think that she can't hold the chopsticks steady to pick up the rice. And then when he tells her, well, if you're going to eat like a dog, then, you're just a dog. You're no good to me. And so then he says, pick up the sticks. And she picks them up and she starts to eat again. And you see her, you don't see her face, you see it from behind her, and she's shaking and her hand is shaking, and she gets some rice into her mouth. And you see Pai Mei looks at her and he smiles a little bit because he's proud of her. And that was just like, you're like, awesome. And those are the little things sometimes that you pick up from seeing movies over and over again. And sometimes, a cigar is a cigar, as Freud would say, or, something to jump off on a small tangent. Something from El Mariachi was Robert Rodriguez he said he went to show El Mariachi to some college kids or whatever, and at a film school or somewhere, and the kids were like, oh my God, I like how you had the dog on the bike, and that was showing that now the mariachi has become an animal. It's become like a dog. I really like that. Is that what you were going for? And he's like, no, my buddy had a dog, cool looking dog. And I was like, hey, can we put the dog in the movie? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he said, we put the dog on a motorcycle, thought it looked funny and thought it looked cute, and did that. So sometimes it's not for certain reasons, but sometimes that Pai Mei thing, of course, him smiling to her, is meant to be seen, is meant to be noticed. I don't know if I noticed it before. I think I kind of did, but it was more powerful this time when I was really like, diving into it. So it was really cool. She then she escapes from, him burying her alive. Spoiler alert. She comes back to Bud's trailer and she fights, Bud has already died now, and she fights Ellie Driver. And it's a great fight scene, and it's in this little trailer, and it reminds me of like Raising Arizona, and, he's scratching his knuckles on the popcorn ceiling and all that stupid stuff. And right during that scene, the bride says, why did Pai Mei pluck out your one eye, your other eye? And she's like, well, because I told him that he was this foolish old man, and you know what I went and killed that foolish old man, and I poisoned his fish. And you feel really bad because they had this bond, Uma Thurman and Pai Mei. And Uma Thurman, the bride, is really upset about that as well. She's like, what? Like, oh my gosh. So then they're getting ready to fight with their swords. They're locked in this battle. And all of a sudden Uma Thurman gets this idea like, oh, I can plug out her other eye. She plucks out the other eye. And then Ellie Driver's like just running, spinning around on the floor, going crazy. And what I did read about that was they were going to like pluck out her eye, and she was going to scream, and some stuff was going to happen. And then one day, Daryl Hannah says, I'm going to go like all out. So when they plucked out her eye, Uma Thurman like started trashing the place and jumping from room to room and tossing all around on the ground. and making Quentin laugh, and Quentin was like, I love it, and he kept it in the movie, so that was pretty cool. And then she heads to meet up with Esteban Vallejo after she fights Ellie Driver. And Esteban Vallejo is played by Michael Parks now as a second part. It was going to be, Ricardo Montalban, who played Khan. But Ricardo Montalban was busy at the time, so he asked Michael Parks to do the, screen test, or to step in to do the dialogue. And when he did, Quentin was like, oh, you're too good. I can't, I'm going to go ahead and use you, and told Ricardo Montalban, never mind, we got somebody. And Michael Parks' like Mexican accent, it's like Antonio Banderas as an older man. Like, he's like suave, he's like cool, like I don't know, Michael Parks just in general is this cool character actor and a cool actor. And I love that Quentin showed him to me the first time with Robert Rodriguez and him doing From Dusk Till Dawn. And his character in this movie, Esteban Vallejo, is the best character, I think, maybe best secondary character in all the Kill Bill movies. Because that is one of my favorite scenes in the second movie, is her meeting him. He's telling her, like, oh, hey, you're pretty. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're Beatrix. Hey, how you doing? And, I'll tell you where Bill is. And then he tells her how to get to Bill. But it's just played so, like, lazy and just, hey, oh, yes. Anyway, it's really good. So check it out. And then she goes to the finale to confront Bill. And I don't want to give too much of that away if you really haven't seen it, but if you have seen it, when she shows up there and she's acting out a death scene, that is just great stuff. Like that whole end scene as well is good. And then her and Bill have their confrontation, and, and does she kill Bill? Okay, I'll tell you. Yes, she does. And, spoiler alert, Bill has her daughter, because I figure there's no way to talk about that scene without giving it away. So if you hadn't seen it, hopefully you'll go, wait, maybe I should stop. But when she sees her daughter for the first time and she starts crying, and then the daughter's like, I shot you, Mommy, you're dead. And then she acts like she's spinning around and she's falling down, and, it's just, great fun. And just that little girl is so good, like a good actress, and just sweet. And Uma being like more, like when you see them three together, they're kind of a good unit together. But then after the daughter's in bed, then Bill kind of becomes a little more maniacal a little bit. So, but Bill has that great conversation about Superman. Superman is always Superman, but he's in disguise playing a weak human because that's how he sees us. He's portraying humans as he sees us, which are weak, just a weak human. And that's the only way that he knows how to play humans. And he said that that's what the bride did when she was going to marry that guy. Was she's still an assassin, but she really thought she could go and be with this guy and not be an assassin. But you're already an assassin. And I think she could maybe do it. I think she might have been happier listening to music. I think after a while she might have got bored with the guy. The guy might have not been too exciting for her, so maybe not. But all in all, Kill Bill 1 and 2, they're on Netflix right now. Definitely check them out. And like I said, if that was too much windage of me talking about Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, I'm still trying to figure out my exact formula of doing this show. But when it's just me, it's a little more difficult. When I'm with somebody, I can say, hey, Joe, what do you think about Kill Bill? What was your favorite scene? And Joe will go, oh, I thought da-da-da. And I go, oh, yeah, well, I thought, Esteban Vallejo was good. And Joe will go, I thought it was stupid. So now we go to The Getaway. Like I said, why I chose The Getaway is just because I have it on Blu-ray. It's Steve McQueen, Ali MacGraw, Ben Johnson, Sally Struthers, and Al Lettieri. And I like Al Lettieri, but The Getaway is about a recently released ex-con and his loyal wife go on the run after a heist goes awry. Now, it's directed by Sam Peckinpah, So for those of you who've seen The Wild Bunch or The Ballad of Cable Hogue or Killer Elite, the original Killer Elite, you'll know Sam Peckinpah, or Straw Dogs. But if you haven't, you should check this out. One of his masterpieces is The Wild Bunch, and in fact, one of my favorite lines from Dusk Till Dawn is, "I will turn this place into the fucking Wild Bunch if I think that you were fucking with me." And you just know right away that he means bloody. He'll make that place bloody because Wild Bunch, that end scene is so bloody. But anyway, here's some stuff I wrote down and then we'll riff on it. My wife said tonight, so we're watching it tonight, she goes, "Wow, this acting is horrible." And then she's like, "I like the one with Alec Baldwin better because they remade it in 94. And I said, "Honey, I know, but it's one of my favorites." I said, "I like these gritty movies." And she was like, "Yeah, but there's no emotions coming from the characters when they were shooting people and whatnot." And I said, "They're bad guys. Like, they're not going to be like, 'Oh, I'm sorry I shot you.'" And then I found out later on an interview after watching it, then I watched all the making of stuff, which, like I said, I've gotten away from. And me loving movies, I need to go back and watch all the making ofs and all the audio commentaries that I can, because I learned some stuff tonight, which was in an interview with Steve McQueen, they have a virtual commentary. So it's got Ally McGraw, Sam Peckinpah, and Steve McQueen talking for like 10 minutes. So to show the movie, to show a picture of them on the one side, and then they'll talk. So anyway, Steve McQueen that said that he is pretty much doing his take on a Humphrey Bogart movie called High Sierra. And he said him and Ally McGraw and Sam Peckinpah all liked Humphrey Bogart. You know, they were all liked High Sierra. Humphrey Bogart, he said, was great. So that is another criminal trying to outrun the law. And when you hear that, then that makes sense. Like, if I told my wife that, for one, she wouldn't know. She knows what maybe Humphrey Bogart looks like, but she's never seen a Humphrey Bogart movie. And she's never seen like a Humphrey Bogart movie where he's like a bad guy. So if you think of him as a Humphrey Bogart type, and the way Humphrey Bogart was and all those guys were in those old movies where they would kill somebody and just have a solid look on their face and not have any emotions, because acting wasn't really about that. It was more about being that person, which we'll get to also with Steve McQueen. But sometimes actors back then, maybe not as much now, but actors back then had to play who they were. Pretty much John Wayne was John Wayne no matter where he was at. So John Wayne could not, as my dad would explain it to me, I said, "Hey, Dad, I saw that movie Brokeback Mountain." And he's like, "Oh, Brokeback Mountain, a bunch of gay cowboys. You think John Wayne would ever play a gay cowboy?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It seems like, it'd be a good stretch for him. It might be interesting." "No, he would never do that." And I started thinking about it, and I go, "Yeah, I think you're right. He would never do it." Same thing with Steven Spielberg. Asked him to be in 1942. He said, "Hey, why don't you be in my World War II comedy that I'm doing?" And he asked John Wayne, and John Wayne was like, "Oh, who am I? I'll be playing the Robert Stack." Robert Stack played this general, was a real general. And John Wayne's like, "No, I knew that general. I can't do that. Like, that wouldn't be right for my character. For me, as John Wayne." And it's that same thing. So, like, as Humphrey Bogart, as, James Cagney, these certain people you couldn't play against type. You had to be you because your fan base was built on that, just like Humphrey Bogart. But now I'll get into the trivia of this movie in a minute. But this movie, because my wife also, she saw the blood and the special effects from the gunshot wounds and stuff. It's bad. But it was 1972, so I'm used to it. I can go, "Oh, that's cool. Like, I like it. Like, it's fun." Like, you're in a movie, but you're watching it more. Like, I like it because it's gritty. It's like a crime. It's a heist. They plan a heist. They do the heist. They're running from the law. Really cool. Then what's funny about that, I looked up The Getaway. I was looking up things to talk about it. And here's a Roger Ebert quote from 1972 when the movie came out. This is just a little bit of what he said. And it's funny how sometimes they've said that now people review it and it's got a better reviews now. But the initial review was this. Sam Peckinpah's The Getaway is a big, glossy, impersonal, mechanical toy. It's like one of those devices for executive desks with the stainless steel balls on the strings. It functions with great efficiency, but doesn't accomplish anything. Click, click, click. The movie is pretty to look at, though, and there's a quiet little chase scene on a train that is a masterpiece of its kind. So what I did right here was there is a really cool moment where a con man tricks Carol, Ally McGraw, into letting him help her put the large suitcase of money into a locker at the train station, and then he switches the keys, you know how con men do, and steals her money. Doc, Steve McQueen, finds out and makes her find the guy, and then the chase is on. And it's pretty cool stuff. He follows him onto the train. The guy sees him following him. He's trying to hide. Steve McQueen finds him, and, it's pretty neat. So, finding at the end, this is also what I kind of like. Like, at the end now, there's 6 bad guys. Rudy, Doc, and Carol are all in El Paso in a hotel. And that is where we get a shootout like only Sam Peckinpah can do. So, it's, there's this cool scene. And I'd say even, when I saw this movie originally, I forget where, but I saw the original Getaway, the 72 version. I saw it maybe in the early 90s or late 80s, and I was like, oh, wow, that was really good. And then in 94, the Getaway, the remake came out, and Joe and I went and saw that. And I was like, oh, it was good. I said it was different. I would explain it to him. Joe was like, I've never seen the original Getaway. So one day I lent it to him when I had it on DVD. He watched it, and he was like, I like the original. I like the 94 one better because that was the first one he saw. A lot of people are that way. They see King Kong from 76, they're going to like that better than the 33 version because the 33 version is black and white. They didn't grow up with that one, or they didn't see that one first. They saw 76 version. Or the young kids now, they saw the 2005 version that Peter Jackson did, and they go, that's my King Kong. So that's, the difference with the movies. But that end scene, there's a hotel, there's a thing, Doc's coming down the stairs, and he sees those 6 guys, and he's got the shotgun in like this white bag, like a white, cloth bag. And you see the cloth slide off of the shotgun slowly. And then he starts shooting people and running back up the stairs. Oh, so cool. And that's just pretty much the beginning of it after he fights Rudy a little bit. Rudy is played by Al Lettieri, and he's the one that I liked in the movies. I'll get to what he was in a minute. So some interesting facts about this movie, The Getaway, are Steve McQueen almost starred in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid with Paul Newman. That was just something that was on there that I was like, oh, interesting. Which, by the way, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, great movie. David Fincher's favorite movie of all time. That's one of the first films that he saw that he loved as a kid. I love that scene of, he says, the bad guys, the posse's coming, and he's like, look, we're going to have to jump. And then Sundance Kid says, I don't know, can't we just, and he goes, no, we're going to have to jump. And Sundance Kid finally goes, I can't swim, all right? And he goes, what are you kidding? The fall will probably kill you. And then they jump. Oh, so great. And then Steve McQueen wanted the role of Doc McCoy because he was looking for a good bad guy role. So like I said, he wanted, kind of like Humphrey Bogart, you kind of root for him. He's a bad guy, but he doesn't kill innocent people. He maybe only kills the bad people that deserve it. Here's something that I found really interesting. Peter Bogdanovich from The Last Picture Show, who directed The Last Picture Show, almost directed The Getaway, but instead went on to direct What's Up, Doc? So he was all set. Steve McQueen and the producer wanted him to do The Getaway. That would have been a totally different movie had Peter Bogdanovich done it. I can't even imagine. I know they both would take place in Texas, so maybe it'd have a same kind of feel, but they watched the Last Picture Show and they loved it and they wanted him, and then he took the job, What's Up Doc, over the Getaway, which is good because then Sam Peckinpah took it, and that's what we got. Steve McQueen received no upfront money, but did get 10% of the gross receipts, which was pretty good for him in the long run, because I'll tell you here at the end how much the movie made, and that was in its initial release, I believe. The part of Carol almost went to Sybil Shepherd, Stella Stevens, Angie Dickinson, or Diane Cannon. The producer wanted Ally McGraw, who was married to the famous producer Robert Evans at the time, although her and McQueen had a strong instant attraction and would be married in 1973 and stay married until 1978. So that was interesting because that broke up her wedding, her marriage with Robert Evans. And but if you've seen Robert Evans in any interviews, he seems like a total dick. So I think I'd rather be with Steve McQueen if I were her. Even if I'm me, I'd rather be with Steve McQueen. Anyway, Peckinpah originally wanted Jack Palance to play the part of Rudy, which was the Al Lettieri part, but they could not afford his salary, so they ended up with Al Lettieri, and I like him a lot. He was also in The Godfather as Virgil the Turk Sollozzo, and Mr. Majestic as Frank Renda. So that's what he was in. Mr. Majestic was good. He ended up dying in like 75 or something, which is crazy, but it's just crazy sometimes where you see somebody in a movie and then you're like, wow, 3 years later they were dead. Or I think Mr. Majestic came out in 74 and he died a year later. But from what I heard, he drank a lot, him and Sam Peckinpah, and he was unpredictable. So who knows? Ally McGraw hated her own performance in the film. She said, I liked the picture, but I despise my own work. And when I watch it, a lot of it is her just going along for the ride, so it's just a lot of her just staring straight ahead. So it's like, oh, okay, I could kind of, if I had to watch myself doing that, I'd be like, come on, do something. A story that I like that goes with Steve McQueen is Steve McQueen had he was in Magnificent Seven, and he's with Yul Brynner. And if I've told this story already, I'm very sorry, but this I like this story. This is about like acting, like an actor's take on something. So he gets on the buckboard with on the stagecoach with Yul Brynner. They're supposed to watch a stagecoach that has a bunch of money on it, and they don't want it to get robbed, and they're protecting their town still and everything. So there's Steve McQueen. He's getting ready to load the shotgun because he's riding shotgun. That's why they call it that. And Yul Brynner's going to drive the horses, and he's going to ride shotgun and defend off anybody who attacks. So they're getting ready for the shot. They're getting ready to go, and Steve McQueen takes the shells out of his belt, and he shakes them by his ear to make sure that, like, if you know a shotgun shell, it's got gunpowder and little BBs in it. So he shakes it, and he loads it, and he takes another one out, and he shakes it, he loads it into the double barrel and closes it. Yul Brynner goes to either the director or somebody and goes, what the fuck is this kid doing? He's like, what? And he goes, he's upstaging me. He's doing this thing. Everybody's going to be watching him. Nobody's going to be watching me. And that's the thing of being an actor. If you can do that little thing that draws people's attention, they're going to remember that, and they're going to forget you. And Yul Brynner at this time was on his, going down. He was, this was Magnificent Seven was like 67 or something. So he's on his way down, being an actor. He was in The King and I and all that great stuff. So it's funny how you're, then he's going to be like, who the fuck is this kid? But that's something that I'm sure that Steve McQueen was like, I'm going to shake this shotgun shell and put it in, and it worked really good. And Steve McQueen came from TV when he was doing, Wanted Dead or Alive. So that was awesome. So the other, sorry to go off on a tangent, Walter Hill remembered, he said, you can see Steve's military training in his films. He was so brisk and confident in the way he handled the guns. It was McQueen's idea to have his character shoot and blow up a squad car in the scene where Doc holds two police officers at gunpoint. And then something else about McQueen. Peckinpah was upset that McQueen had final cut privileges on The Getaway. the actor Richard Bright, that plays the con man that steals the money out of the thing, said that McQueen chose takes that made him look good, and Peckinpah felt that the actor played it safe. Quote, he chose the playboy shots of himself. He's playing it safe with these pretty boy shots, unquote. Now, what I feel of that, I've kind of talked about it before, is that Steve McQueen knows Steve McQueen. Nobody knows him better. So Steve McQueen's going to go, my fans want to see me looking awesome. I want to see myself looking awesome. I'm the hero of the film pretty much, even though I'm a bad guy. So I want to look good. And so he'll take those. Some actors now might be like, I'll look a little, let's let this guy look better. There's an old story of Roman Holiday where Gregory Peck is starring with this girl named Audrey Hepburn, new actress, in this movie. And he said, no, she's great. I want her to have top billing. Put me below her and all that. And it was like, he does stuff like that. But sometimes actors just go, no, this is me. I got to have these best shots. And the one that I got from this, kind of like what I said about John Wayne with Spielberg, is another Spielberg story that Spielberg told on the Close Encounters DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, was he went to Steve McQueen. He said, I want you to be in my movie called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And Steve McQueen said, well, what's the character? And he told him, and Steve McQueen read the script, and he said, I like it, but I can't cry in a shower. He goes, that's not me. My fans wouldn't like to see me crying in a shower. So Richard Dreyfuss got the part, which I couldn't imagine Steve McQueen in that part. Like if he could do it as funny as Richard Dreyfuss. But of course it might be a little different because it wouldn't have that humor in it. But Richard Dreyfuss' character is so funny and human in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's just so good. Like, and him crying in the shower with like half red face and, just freaked out. Oh, really good. Another thing, here's the really interesting thing that I found, and I just watched a thing on the DVD that was all about this composer named Jerry Fielding. So Peckinpah's longtime composer and collaborator Jerry Fielding was commissioned to score The Getaway. After the film's second preview screening, McQueen was unhappy with the music and used his clout to hire Quincy Jones to rescore the film. Jones's music had a jazzier edge and featured harmonica solos by Toots Thielemans and vocals by Don Elliott, both of whom had been his associates. Peckinpah was unhappy with this action and took out a full-page ad in Daily Variety on November 17, 1972, including a letter he had written to Fielding thanking him for his work. Fielding would work with Peckinpah on two more films, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia in 1974 and Killer Elite in 1975. Jones was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for his original score. And what was interesting with that, so Jerry Fielding, he did the music for Outlaw Josie Wales, like a whole bunch of other movies, and other Sam Peckinpah movies. And so that's just really cool that Sam Peckinpah put out that full-page ad in Daily Variety. So that's awesome. And the wife was saying on this little small documentary that they were all friends. Sam Peckinpah would come over, he'd bring the kids, Jerry Fielding and them, they'd all hang out. So that's what really tore him up. They said Steve McQueen talked to the wife, and said, we got bad news. We're not going to use his music. We're going to go with Quincy Jones. I don't know if he said Quincy Jones, but he goes, we're not using his music. And they had already put out posters with Jerry Fielding's name on it. I think you can still find it. So he was like, do you want to tell him? And she was like, no, you can tell him. So she goes, then Steve McQueen called downstairs on the other number. And then she said about 10 minutes later, here comes her husband. And he goes, well, guess what? And she goes, I already know. He already told me. And so she said he was pretty upset by that. And after that, people would ask him, like, do you want to redo? This other guy did our music, but do you want to do it? And he would say no, because he knew how bad it felt to be pushed aside like that. So I thought that was really cool. And then for production cost, on a production budget of $3,352,254. The film grossed $36,734,619 in the U.S. alone. So, they made their money back and then some, and, Steve McQueen got his money. And then something that kind of puts this whole movie, like, if you were unsure about seeing it, I would say you should still see it, even though it's a little dated, but still check it out. But Walter Hill later recalled, "I thought of the films I wrote, I thought it was far and away the best one and most interesting. I thought Sam did a few things while shooting that were terrific. It was not reviewed very well, but a huge hit. Biggest hit Sam ever had. He would always say, 'We did this one for the money,' which is one of those kind of half-truths. He was well paid, and the movie made a lot of money, and the fact it was about the only film where his points meant anything, he took a fair amount of money out too. After all the disappointment and heartbreak of all these films, he had never gotten any reward or been well paid. It meant a lot to him." So, and then the last thing I wrote here is a remake of the film, like I said, was released on February 11th, 1994, directed by Roger Donaldson, and co-produced and co-written by the originals David Foster and Walter Hill. It features Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger in the leading roles, and Michael Madsen, James Woods, David Morse, and Jennifer Tilly in the supporting roles. The film received generally negative reviews, with particular criticism for its plot and characters being laden with cliches and uninspired retreading of the original. In 2008, Baldwin referred to it as a bomb. So I don't think it was a bomb. I think it's pretty much a direct remake. Not exactly like Psycho, and Psycho had a little bit of tweaks that, Gus Van Sant did, but it's still pretty much exact. But if you want to see a more modern, then watch the 94 remake. If you don't care, watch the original, just to see Steve McQueen and all them being pretty badass. Michael Madsen's good in this other one, though. They all are. Jennifer Tilly's funny, all that stuff. So anyway, that's the show for this week. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the next 2 weeks. Joe and I will figure something out, but it'll be it's going to be not only a celebration of him and I being friends for 40 years, but also it'll be us talking movies, which will be fun, and you won't just hear me blabbing on about it. So send any emails or any requests of movies that you want me to watch to mycelluloidheart@gmail.com. And until 2 weeks from now, I am Philip, and I will talk to you then.
The biggest R I feel is regret. Regret that maybe the greatest warrior I have ever met her end at the hands of a bushwhacking, scrub, elky piece of shit like you.